Guys, please confirm to me. All of your Redmi voice listening. Those are attending online. Guys, please confirm to me. All of your Redmi voice listening. Those are attending online. Am I audible? Guys, please confirm to me. All of your Redmi voice listening. Those are attending online. Am I audible? Guys, please confirm to me. All of your Redmi voice listening. Those are attending online. Am I audible? Is it okay, guys? Then right. Good evening. And check-in what we completed in the last session. And if we understand the topics, that is just names of the topics there. Just we started with the spring framework integration classes. Okay. Just one minute. If you get my voice on screen now, is my voice is clear? Am I audible? Guys, please confirm to me. All of you get my voice on screen now. Is my voice is clear? Yeah, now okay, right. Clear level. All right. So what is an enterprise that we understood? And a few definitions are given regarding this enterprise. After that, enterprise application are given that as a software application, it can be used to simplify the internal business processing in the enterprises, like enterprise application can be understood. Then after that, enterprise application architecture. In that enterprise application architecture, overall, 3 layers we have to prepare. What are the 3 layers here we have to prepare there? User interface layer, business processing layer, data storage and access layer. These are the 3 layers. Then about the 3 layers we are given already some information. Right, sir? As the topmost layer, its main purpose is to improve look and feel to the enterprise application. User interface is providing an entry point for the users to enter into the enterprise application. It provides a very good environment to collect the data from the user to submit the data to the enterprise application. It provides very good environment to perform client-side data validations with the JavaScript functions. User interface layer is able to provide a very good environment to send different types of requests like post, head, put, and so on from client to the server-side application. To prepare user interface layer, we have to use a separate logic. That logic is called as what? The presentation logic. To prepare your presentation logic, we have to use a set of technologies like what their UI technologies are in place of this web. You can use like what their UI technologies. What are the various UI technologies here we are having there? HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, JavaScript, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, fine. Business processing layer is very clear. It's the heart of the enterprise application, which will provide very good environment to define and execute all the business rules and regulations which are required for our enterprise application, which are required by the clients actually. Fine. To prepare this business processing layer, we are going to use a separate logic that is called business logic. And to prepare this business logic, we have to use a set of technologies like servlets, service layer components, or EJB, Spring, and so on. So many content here. Data storage and access layer. It is the bottommost layer in the enterprise application development. It is able to provide a very good environment to interact with the database in order to perform the database operations from the enterprise applications. To prepare data storage and access layer, we have to use a separate logic called persistence logic. To prepare persistence logic, we have to use a set of technologies and tools like what there JDBC, EJB, entity beans, Hibernate, Spring JDBC, Spring ORM, Spring Boot, Data JPA, and so on. Enterprise application types here are given: web applications and distributed applications. Then we have a question: what are the differences between web application and distributed application there? Web application is a client server application where the complete application logic will be distributed at server side only. Distributed application is a client server application where the complete application logic will be distributed at both the client and server. In web applications, client is fixed, that is what their browser. In a distributed applications, client is not fixed, it is variable. It may be a main class with main method, or maybe a servlet, or maybe a JSP page, or maybe a framework applications like what? Struts, JSF, and so on. To prepare web applications, we will use a set of technologies called web technologies like what? Servlets, JSPs, JSTL, expression language, and so on. To prepare distributed applications, we will use a set of technologies called distributed technologies like what they? Socket programming, RMI, Corba, EJPs, web services, and so on. Web applications are executed by the web servers and application servers, whereas distributed applications are executed by the application servers only. Web application is a combination of the web components like servlets, JSPs, and so on, which are executed by the web containers. Distributed applications are the combination of the distributed components like what? Like EJB components, which are executed by the distributed containers like what they're EJB containers. To prepare enterprise applications, we have to use both the web components and distributed components in the combined manner. This point is important. With only web layer, we are unable to prepare the complete enterprise application. With only distributed layer, distributed components, we are unable to complete the complete enterprise application. Enterprise application is the combination of web components and what next one here now? Like distributed components. Both the combination is nothing but what the enterprise application that we already understood clearly. Then after that we started with like what the frameworks. Frameworks topic here we understood that, okay? But actually as per the flow we are discussing about this frameworks, no? But I think so. Yesterday I got some requests from the people. I don't know who has sent that request, no? They said to me, sir, can you please give some information about MVC structure also? People are asking to me. MVC design pattern, MVC related points, at least some few points about that. I don't know who has sent that request to me. Okay, fine. I thought of it. I want to discuss even that MVC also. Don't worry for it. Actually, I planned for this MVC structure and all these things whenever we are moving on to the examples, especially in a Spring framework. In a Spring framework, we have a set of modules. What are the various modules are available inside the Spring framework now? Spring core module, Spring JDBC module, Spring AOP module, or Spring ORM module, ORM. Okay, object relational mapping, ORM module. After that, Spring web module, Spring web MVC module. Spring web MVC module is available there. Last one. There I have to discuss about like what they this total information about like what their MVC and its structure. But when people are talking about these frameworks and its related content, no, at least give some few information, few points about this MVC content, you know. Yes, don't worry. I will talk about this MVC, the need of this MVC, how it is available, what are the rules and regulations of this MVC. All the points I will discuss with you clearly. Don't worry for it. But if you want to discuss about it, that I have to discuss before these frameworks only, not after starting the frameworks. Understand it here? That's why few minutes of time. Now let me explain about the MVC points here. Then after that, I'll move on to like what are their frameworks. Yes, sir. Can I go for it? Can I go for it? Permission is not granted. Fine, good. I think today classes it seems totally monopoly. Fine, sir. Fine. Spring framework is not only for male students, right? For both, right? It seems it's good. Fine. Not good. It's good in the sense of my intention is not like that. Fine. Let's move on to the point here. So then here, what is the point here I'm telling to you? Listen carefully. My intention is clear what MVC, but before that, why MVC is coming, that one also I want to discuss with you clearly. Understand it, no? To prepare web applications, especially web applications. Okay, to prepare web applications, there are two design models. There are what there? Two design models. What are the two design models to prepare this web applications? Now, point number one, model one architecture. Number two, model two architecture. But these are somewhat older one only, somewhat older concepts only, but still related to our frameworks. That's why I'm talking with you. Try to understand this clearly. To prepare web applications, there are two design models. The first one is model one architecture, and the second one is what there, model two architecture. Let's understand what is this model one architecture. All of you observe carefully. All right, son. Model one architecture. Model one architecture is a web application architecture. Web application architecture. It was used at a starting point of the web applications. That means almost an outdated model, older model, initial model to prepare the web applications. Understand this point clearly. What is this model actually? What exactly this model actually? What is going on inside this model? I'll show a diagram. Try to understand it clearly. In this model, we are able to have a client browser. This is client. Now, server side application is available. This is server side application. Inside this server side application, now here we are going to use a component. This is called as like what there, controller. This component is nothing but what there, controller. Okay, fine. Here this is like what there, a model component, just like it is a Java bean. It's like what there, a Java bean model component. Okay, now here we are going to have a database. This is the database. This is like what I'm telling to you, database. Now, okay, I'm telling to you, try to understand it clearly. This is controller as well as like what there, view, both are available here only. Controller or what next one, view, both are available here. Instead of saying that, and view. Observe carefully. Now here, what we are going to use as a controller or view, now here inside this, a JSP, a simple JSP page here we are going to use. Don't worry, I think I have not started JSP pages here in our like what now, 7:30 adventure. Very soon we are going to start it. But JSP, a JSP page here we are going to use for what there, controller and as well as like what there, view. This model is like what there, a Java bean component. We know already the Java bean components there now. I think yesterday some of you attended my core Java class, right? Have you attended that? Have you attended? No. In place of Java beans, we are able to use an alternative. What alternative we are able to use? Records. A separate topic I discussed with you. The topic name is what there? Records. There's a latest. That means like what there? The latest version topic there. That means in the Java 15 or 16 version has given the topic the records that we are going to use in place of like what there? Java bean. Definitely one day I will take again review of the records. Then I'm going to use the records in our Spring framework. Definitely. I'm going to talk about the latest version of the Spring framework. That is almost a Spring 5.x version I'm going to use in our classes there. With that 5.x version of the Spring framework, we are going to use what are the records. Spring 5.x version is supporting Java 17th version. Java 17th version records is one of the topic there. that we are going to use in our content. Don't worry for it. All right, sir. Next one is Java Bean. Right. What is the flow of execution here? We are able to have there about this particular one in this particular model. First of all, this is like what I'm telling to you, a client. A client in the sense browser directly. You can think of it, it is a browser. First of all, request will come to the controller and the view controller part directly. We can understand it. All right, sir. Client will submit a request to the controller. Now, this is like what there a request. When controller has given, when controller is taking that request now, immediately controller will identify the respective model component. It able to create an object for the model component, and it is able to execute business logic. It is able to execute what their business logic inside the model component. As part of executing business logic, it will interact with what their database. As part of executing this business logic, it will interact with what their database. It able to perform database operations. After performing database operations, automatically some response will come from the database. No, automatically that response would be taken by the Java Bean. The Java Bean will send that response to like what their viewport. Java Bean will take that response to like what their viewport. Now control and view both are same kernel. Now that viewport is able to generate response back to like what their to the respective client. Now this is like what I'm telling to you. It's a response kernel. Well, if you understand it clearly. Yes, sir. What is the flow of execution? Now tell me, when a client submits request to the web application, at web application, who will take that request? No, controller only. But control and view both are what there a single component. That is what their JSP page, a page, simple page. No. Now controller will take that request. Controller will find the model component. Controller will create object for the model component. Controller will execute business logic, which is available inside the model component. Then model component will interact with the database to perform the database operations. Of course, any type of operation here we can identify, maybe inserting the data, retrieving the data, or updating the data, anything. This model component is able to perform some database operations. Whenever it is performing some database operations, no, the status of the database operation would be taken by this Java Bean, that is model component. It will pass the data to now what their viewport. Now viewport is generating some response back to like what there to the respective client. Their client is able to get the response. This is exactly the model 1 architecture. This is exactly like what there the model 1 architecture. See this one. Now this is a clear cut analysis here we can identify clearly. Model 1 architecture. Right, sir? Observe carefully. Now I want to give some points to try to understand it clearly. In model 1 web application architecture, in model 1 web application architecture, we will use a single page, a JSP page. Simply speaking, a single JSP page is acting as a controller, strictly speaking, is acting as a front controller. I'll give the information. What is the meaning of front controller? It's very simple. I'll discuss with you. All right. A JSP page is acting as a front controller. So observe carefully. Okay. Then first of all, let me introduce all the components here. A single JSP page is acting as a front controller and a viewport. Comma, a Java Bean component is acting as a model component. A model component, it has the business logic. It has what their business logic. That's it. These are the characters which are available inside like what there inside the model 1 web application architecture. In model 1 web application architecture, we will use a single JSP page. As a front controller and a viewport. A Java Bean component acting as a model component. It has the business logic. That's okay, fine. Some terminologies I want to introduce now. Try to understand the terminology. Observe carefully. All of you understand it clearly. In model 1 web application architecture, in model 1 web application architecture, a JSP page is acting as a front controller. So this architecture is called JSP front architecture. What is this architecture there? JSP front architecture. Its name is like what there? JSP front architecture. Understand what I'm telling you now? In model 1 web application architecture, a JSP page is acting as a front controller. So this architecture is called as what there? JSP front architecture. What is the meaning of it now? Every request must be taken by JSP page. Then it will direct that request to what their model components. Model components will execute what their business logic. Again, view part will take the responsibility of getting response and generating response to the respective client. So here a JSP page is acting as a front controller, is a front person to get request to communicate with the client now. That's why this architecture is called as what? JSP front architecture. Understand it clearly. Next one is one more point I'm telling you. Try to recognize this point clearly. In model 1 web application architecture, in model 1 web application architecture, a single JSP page, is acting as a controller to control the complete web application, so this architecture is also called as like what their page centric architecture. All of you understand it clearly. This architecture is also be called as what their page centric architecture. All right, understand it clearly. Who is the controller here now? JSP page now, taking request from the client. Now, what is the job of this JSP page now? What is the job of this particular punch here? As a controller, its job is what there? Identifying model component, instantiating model component, accessing business logic inside this model component, performing database operations, like all this. That means controlling the total web application. Controlling this entire web application could be taken by a single JSP page. That's why this architecture is also be called as like what there? Page centric architecture. Model 1 web application architecture is also be called as what there? JSP front architecture. This architecture is also be called as what there? Page centric architecture. Yes, sir, got it or not? Okay, fine. These are the 2 points here we understood, and the flow of execution also here we understood. But some drawbacks are available with this content. With this particular one, some drawbacks are available. Okay. Now, all of you understand these drawbacks here. What are the points that I'm telling to you? In model 1 web application architecture, in model 1 web application architecture, we will use a single JSP page as a controller and a view, part. So there is no clear cut separation between controller logic and view logic. Am I right or not? There is no clear cut separation between controller logic and view logic. Why? Because controller and view both are what there? A single JSP page. In a single JSP page, how can you differentiate controller logic and view logic? No. And so my point, it's a single component. Both the logics are embedded, but how can we differentiate that? So there is no clear-cut separation between the controller logic and V logic, So it will provide tightly coupled design. It will provide like what there? Tightly coupled design. Understand it clearly. It will provide tightly coupled design for the web applications. It is not suggestible. Tightly coupled design is always not suggestible for our applications. So, I'll forget my point or not. What's the meaning of tightly coupled design? No. For example, in this controller, as per the requirement, if you have any change on controller, automatically the change is available in viewport or not. If you perform any change in viewport, now automatically that change is available to the controller or not. Understand my point here? So that is tightly bounded, tightly bounded. So this tight coupled architecture is not at all suggestible in our enterprise applications. This is point number one. I'm asking one more question to all of you. Now try to answer for it. One simple question I'm asking to you. Now try to answer for it. All of you. One simple question, very simple question. Try to answer for me. What is the main difference between servlet and JSP? Main one exact difference. Exact one difference I require now. Okay. First of all, tell me what you are aware about it. I will pick from it. Servlets are mainly for what then? Servlets are having Java. Okay, good. JSPs? JSPs. All right. Anyway, I'm giving that information to you. Now try to put more concentration now. If you want to prepare web applications by using only servlets, there we have to write a lot of Java code. Developer must require very good knowledge on Java. Java stuff is required for the developer. But the same web application, if you prepare by using JSPs, no need to have even a single bit of Java. Without knowing Java, we can prepare web applications by using JSPs. The main intention of the JSP, the main purpose of the JSPs is to reduce Java code as much as possible in the web applications. JSPs are introduced because of this particular reason only. To avoid Java code as much as possible in web applications. Because of that reason only, JSPs are introduced. All of you get my point or not? JSPs were introduced because of avoiding Java code in web applications. Got it or not? Okay, fine. So JSP main intention is what they to reduce Java code as much as possible. But in this architecture, we can understand it clearly. Which component we have used as a controller? Now tell me. JSP page we have used as what their controller. But remember carefully. In web applications, controller is the main component, the centric component. Controller is what there? The central component in the web applications. It has so many responsibilities. That controller will have what there? Number of responsibilities. To achieve these responsibilities, to achieve the controller responsibilities in web applications, existed JSP features are not sufficient. Whatever the features we are having in JSPs, no, they are not sufficient. But to complete the responsibilities of the JSP pages, that means controller, to complete the responsibilities of the controller, we have to write Java code inside the JSP pages. We have to write Java code inside what their JSP pages. But writing Java code inside the JSP pages is against to the JSP rules and regulations or not? JSP meant for Java less. But if you use JSP as a controller, existing features of the JSPs are not sufficient to control the complete web application or to achieve the responsibilities of the controller. So where we have to write some Java code inside the JSP pages, but it is against to the rules and regulations of the JSP technology. So it seems clearly it is unstable architecture or not? It's clearly unstable architecture or not? The components are doubtful. The JSP pages we recommended for controller, but it is a page basically. It is against to the Java code. But to complete the responsibilities of the controller, we have to write Java code inside the JSPs. Then only we are able to achieve it. So because of that reason, what I'm telling there, This architecture is a totally an unstable architecture. It is not much suitable for what the web applications. Get my point or not? Now let's move on to this point also clearly. Understand it clearly. In a model one architecture, web application architecture. What happened? I think the tab was closed. I think so. Now tell me, in model one web application architecture, model one web application architecture, we will use a JSP page as a controller to perform all the controller responsibilities, the existed features of the JSP pages are not sufficient, where it is required to provide Java code inside the JSP page, but it is against to the JSP rules and regulations. It's against to the JSP rules and regulations. That's it. Okay. That point is sufficient. It's against to the JSP rules and regulations. Yes, sir. Against the JSP rules and regulations. That's it. To overcome all these problems, there we have to use what there model 2 web application architecture. Sir, all of you are getting it or not? To overcome the above problems, we have to use model 2 web application architecture. To overcome all the above problems, we have to use model 2 web application architecture. That's it. Then what is this model 2 web application architecture? Model 2 web application architecture. Observe carefully. In model 2 web application architecture, we will separate control component and view components. We will not use a single page for controller and view part. We will separate controller component and view component. We will provide separate elements for controller and view. That's it. Answer my point here. Not as a single component, not as a single page. Understand it clearly. Okay. Right, sir. This is one point here we are able to understand. Then what next one here? We'll separate the controller component and view component. That's okay. But what exactly this architecture about this model 2 web application architecture? What exactly this architecture, Kiran? All right, now see this one. I want to show this architecture clearly. Now this is like what their client browser. We can say this is like what their a client. Okay. At a server side, we are going to understand. This is server side application. Here we are able to have a database. Okay. This is server side application. This is like what their database. Now this is like what I'm telling to you, server. At the server side, we are going to use a separate component as a controller. This I'm going to use a component. Okay. 1 minute. Okay. Next one is, after that we are able to have a separate component like what their view. Then we are able to have a model component. Just have taken this model component like what there a single circle. Of course, I can remove this. I can provide number of model components. Like this, number of model components are existed here. Okay. All right. Now these are about like what their model components. But controller should be only one. Okay. Now, what we are able to provide, this is database. First of all, let me introduce each and every component what we are going to provide inside our content here. Let me introduce each and every component. All right. Here, component is like what there, we can identify a servlet. As a controller, we are going to use what there, a servlet. It is fixed, it is clear. As a viewport, we are going to use a set of JSP pages or a set of HTML pages. HTML pages, whatever it may be, some presentation related content, either JSP pages or HTML pages or whatever it may be. Anything here we can use. But as a model component, what we are able to provide there, either we can use Java beans or we can use maybe inside this, we can use like what there, something else JDBC, or we can use like what there, Hibernate. Anyway, for the sake of interacting with the database, these technologies we required. At the same time, we are going to include what there, some business logic. Part of the business logic, we are going to perform the database operations. That's okay, fine. Here database is available. But how? How flow of execution is going to be happen inside this particular content? Listen, all of you understand this clearly. First of all, when we submit requests from client to the server, who will take that request first? No, controller will take that request. Who will take that request here? No, controller will take that request. 1 minute. Just have written component. No, there is not a component. There we can understand. This is like what their controller. All right. First of all, controller will take that request. Then what controller will do now? After taking that request, controller will identify a particular model component. Which model component has the business logic with respect to the request? A model component will be identified. When a model component is identified, controller will execute the business logic of the model component. Part of it, it will interact with the database. It able to perform the database operations. When it performs the database operations, automatically controller will take the required status of that business logic and everything. After that, controller will identify a particular view component. Controller will identify a particular view component. Then controller will delegate responsibility to the view part to generate response to the respective client. Then immediately when controller has given responsibility to generate the view part now, then view component will generate response to the respective client. All of you understand it clearly? What is the job of this controller? Controller will interact with the model component to perform business logic, to execute business logic as completed. After executing that business logic, controller will forward request to the view component in order to generate dynamic response. Now view component is able to generate dynamic response to the respective client. So now client is submitting request. Now viewport is generating like what their response to the respective component, respective client. But while generating response, at the time of generating response from viewport to the client now, viewport is able to communicate with what their model component. Two-way communication is possible here. It is able to communicate with what their model component. One thing here we can understand. Mainly it is able to get some data from the model component. Say the status of the registration. Say for example, registration form I'm using there. Registration form.html. Controller servlet. Registration model. We are going to have it. In the registration action, some business logic here we are going to execute. By that we are able to perform some database operation. Then here what we require the information, registration success or failure, that information here we require. It is available now. Then what this viewport is going to do now? Viewport is going to display the status of the registration. So it has to get data from what their model component. It able to display that registration success or registration failure kind of information to what they to the respective client. So client is able to display the success or failure of the respective content at our client browser. This is important. This is at present model we are going to use. In MVC based applications, we are going to use these concepts only. That's why this is not outdated architecture. This is at present utilized architecture. We have to understand it clearly. So then viewport is able to interact with the model component to get the data from the model in order to generate dynamic response to the respective client. But in some situations, viewport is giving some notifications to the model component. Some notification to store notifications also directly it will send that notification to what their model component. That's why here I given like what their two-way communication. Of course here also we are able to have what communication here, no two-way communication. It will execute the business logic. It will get the written values of like what their business logic. With the written value, it will forward that request to like what their viewport. So examples I'm telling there, controller will have communication with model in a to and fro. Then viewport is also having communication with the model in a to and fro here. But mainly what we are going to recognize the content here, no controller will communicate with the model to set the data. Viewport is able to have the viewport is able to interact with the model component to get the data. In general, we are able to provide these points only, but internally to and fro communication is available between control and model component, beyond model component. Understand my point here? But time being, we can remember this architecture. That's sufficient. When we go for the application development, there we are going to talk about more content clearly. Right, sir. Now this is totally MVC based architect. That means model to web application model to architecture clearly. Now tell me here the components are very much clear or not? As a controller, what we are going to use? A servlet. As a viewport, what we are going to use? No, a set of JSP pages or HTML pages. As a model component, so many points, so many technologies here we are going to use now. Now let me check this punch here. All right, in model to web application architecture, we will separate the controller component and view component. In model to web application architecture, in model to web application architecture, we will use a servlet as a controller, a servlet as a controller, comma a set of JSP or HTML pages as a viewport. But nowadays everybody is using JSP pages only as a vpart. Nobody is using what their HTML pages now. Understand it clear? Why? Because JSP pages are able to provide dynamism in the response. Dynamism is possible. HTML pages are what they're static. That's why nowadays nobody is using static pages directly, but everybody they are using what their dynamism. That means JSP pages only. Right, sir. Next one is what they comma and the components like and the components like Java beans, Java beans, JDBC, comma, like what their Hibernate, and so on and so on, as like what their model components, and so on, like what their model components. Observe carefully. Like so. Now these are about like what I'm telling to you, the components here inside our model 2 architecture. Gotcha. Now listen carefully, all of you know. In this model 2 architecture, a servlet is a Java class. Am I right or not? Yes, sir. Servlet is what there? Servlet is what there? A Java class. A servlet, a Java class is used as a controller, front controller. So this architecture is called as servlet front architecture. This architecture is called as what there? Servlet front architecture. Answer my point clearly, no? Right, sir. This point here we have to understand servlet front architecture. Now tell me, in model 2 web application architecture, model 2 web application architecture, we will use a servlet as a front controller, a servlet as a front controller. So this architecture, this architecture is called servlet front architecture, servlet front architecture. Right, sir. This architecture is called as what there? Servlet front architecture. Remember this point now. Next one is, apart from this, now try to understand it now. Here, a Java class is acting as a central component or not? Controller is a central component. So in this entire architecture, controller is what there? Central component. So this central component is what there? A Java class. Servlet is a Java class now. So because of this reason, this architecture is also be called as servlet centric architecture. This architecture is called as what there? Servlet centric architecture. But previously page centric architecture. But now it is what there? Servlet centric architecture. Observe carefully. All right, sir. In the model 2 web application architecture, we will use a servlet as a controller to control the complete web application. So this architecture is called like what there? Servlet centric architecture. This architecture is called as what there? Servlet centric architecture. Is it? All of you are getting it or not? That's okay, fine. Now just I want to give this architecture clearly for you. By that you are able to get some clarity. Last, I want to give one conclusion. Now try to understand this conclusion. All right, sir. Architecture here I gave in the total information to you. All of you understand it clearly. Model 2 web application architecture is the pure MVC architecture. Model 2 web application architecture is what there? A pure MVC architecture. Serious? This architecture is what there? MVC architecture. Model view controller. Sir, got it or not? Say this point. Next conclusion. Note. Observe carefully. Some of the web application frameworks some of the web application frameworks are designed, on the basis of the, some of the web application frameworks are designed on the basis of the model 2 web application architecture, model 2 web application architecture. So these frameworks are called MVC based frameworks. These frameworks are called as what? They're MVC based web frameworks. That's it. Yes, sir. Some of the frameworks are designed on the top of what? Their MVC architecture. That means model to web application architecture. So these frameworks are called as what? Their MVC based web frameworks. Now I want to take an example for this MVC based web frameworks now. The best example is what? Their struts. Best example is what? Their struts. Outdated, no need to think much about it, but it's one of the framework. Next one is what? Their JSF, Java Server Faces. This also be one of the outdated, not required to use that. Spring Web MVC. It is not outdated. At present, we are able to use the Spring Web MVC. This also be like what? Their MVC based framework. I'll forget my point or not? All right, so now this is exactly the meaning of like what? Their MVC framework, MVC architecture, model to web application architecture is called as what? Their web MVC architecture. All of you are getting clarity? What is this MVC architecture? Yes, sir. All of you are getting clarity? What is this MVC architecture? All right. Now the next point is like what I'm telling to you after completion of this. Rules and regulations. That means if you want to prepare web applications on the basis of MVC architecture, if you want to prepare web applications on the basis of the MVC architecture, then we have to use the following rules and regulations. These are important even for us in Spring Web MVC. These rules and regulations are important for us. Yes, sir. All of you are following or not? So theoretical concepts only. Next to few days of time, 1 or 2 days of time, theory only. Once if I start Spring and its features and its content there, from that point onwards, we are going to start programming parts here. But before that, we need to understand why Spring is coming into the picture. Because of what reason that Spring framework is available for us. That every point we have to understand. Remember it. Now we are not learning any technology. We are not learning any programming language. Now we are learning a product. Now we are learning what? There a product. The product is what? There Spring product. That product learning is totally different. Technology learning is totally different. Technology learning or programming learning is both are same, like core Java. But product learning in the sense what? There you have to understand the total architecture of that product initially. Complete structure of that product here we have to understand. Then after that we are going to take individual one by one. Then we are going to explore that one by one. But first of all, the total flow, the total architecture we have to understand. There's a way of learning what? There that product. Understand it clearly. So now we are learning what? There Spring product. That framework is nothing but what? There a product. Try to understand it clearly. All right, sir. Good. As per the architecture view, should not interact with the model, right? Yeah, already it was interacted here, right? Just we can understand it. A model like what? There and viewport both are interacted here. But for what purpose? There no, for getting the data in general, not to set any data. But we can give some notifications to our their model command. That is different story now. Okay, don't worry. I will explain that points here. Now try to understand it clearly. Yeah. If we want to prepare web applications on the basis of the MVC architecture, then we have to use the following rules and regulations. Rule number 1. Everybody understand this clearly. Rule number 1. In MVC based web applications, we must use a servlet as a controller and a set of JSP pages as a viewport. We must not interchange we must not interchange the controller and view components. Controller and view components. Yes, sir. What is that point number one here I'm telling there? As a controller, we have to use servlet only. As a viewport, we have to use what there? JSP pages only. As a controller, we should not use JSP page. As a viewport, we should not use what there? Servlet. If we interchange both, automatically the total architecture is going to be disturbed. So because of that reason, we should not, like what I'm telling there, we should not include, we should not interchange that controller and view components. That's the point here I'm telling you now. Right, sir. Now, next one, apart from this, listen carefully. In MVC based web applications, controller must interact with the model component to set data to the model in order to execute business logic. Okay, in order to execute what their business logic. And viewport, okay, that's enough. This is about like what their controller component. In MVC based web application, the controller component must interact with the model component to set data to the model in order to execute the business logic. Just only to set data in order to execute business logic. Of course, flow of execution is coming back to the controller. That's okay. Understand my point? But mainly it will interact with the model component to set the data. See, actually, controller is going to get the data from user, right? From the form, from the client. The data it will set to the model in order to execute the business logic. That's the main intention of the controller. Okay, but what is this viewport actually? The viewport is getting the data from what their model component. For what purpose there? Already some business logic is executed, some status related things are available. The data it is able to get from what their model component to the view component. But internally, we will interact with the model even to give some notifications. User is alive or maybe registration is started. To give such type of notifications only, it may interact with the model, but not to set a data to the model. See, user data is not set to the model by view component. User data will be set to the model by what their controller component only. Understand my point here? Okay, forget about that internal concepts. Mainly what we have to remember, controller will interact with the model to set the data. Viewport will interact with the model to get the data. Viewport will interact with the model for what purpose there? To get the data. But internally some other concepts are available that we are going to understand later on. No need to think about them clearly. Right, sir. Now the point is like what I'm telling to you. In MVC based web applications, the viewport will interact with the model components to get the data from the model component. All right, sir. In MVC based web application, the viewport will interact with the model component in order to get the data from what their model components. Hello, for getting internet. Okay, now this part is completed. That's okay, fine. After completion of this part here, next one is what they understand it clearly. All of you observe carefully. One more point. In MVC based web application, controller must not or should not interact with the database directly. Controller should interact with the database through model components only. That means what I am telling there, as a controller we have used a servlet now, there we should not write any JDBC code. The JDBC code we have to write where? Inside the model, that must be activated by what there? Controller only. So controller must not interact with the database. Controller must interact with the database through what components? No, model components only. Model is an interface. It must interact with the database in order to perform the database operations. All right, so understand the points clearly what I'm telling you. No? In MVC based web applications, controller must not interact with the database directly In MVC based web applications, controller must not interact with the database directly. Controller may interact with the database through modal components only. Through modal component. This is one point here we have to understand. The controller, 1 minute, sir. The controller, right, sir. Okay, now observe carefully. After completion of this, what is the point here I'm telling to you? Apart from this, now try to understand it clearly. Say for example, yeah. As a vport, what we are providing there, now tell me. As a vport, what we are using there, now tell me. JSPs, a set of JSP pages here we are using. Got it or not? But here the point is what? As a vport, we are going to use a set of JSP pages, but all these JSP pages must be provided as a Java codeless. All the JSP pages must be provided as what there? Java codeless. What is the meaning of it now? Without Java code only, we have to provide the JSP pages. Here JSP pages are mainly for what purpose there? View part. That means presentation part only. So where Java code is not going to be utilized, where Java code is not going to be provided. Right, sir. Understand the point clearly? What I'm telling you clearly. Right, sir. Observe now. Now the point is what there in MVC based web applications, we will use a set of JSP pages as a viewport, but where all the JSP pages must be provided without the Java code. Of course, we can write Java code inside the JSP pages, but it is against the JSP rules and regulations. In MVC based applications also, we require the JSP pages without Java code. As much as possible, we have to avoid what there? Java code. With the Java codeless or without the Java code only, we have to provide the JSP component. Or else maybe I want to write like what there? With the Java codeless. That means as much as possible reduce the Java code inside the JSP pages with the Java codeless. Then only here we are able to provide the component. That's okay, fine. Next one is apart from this, another point here. All right, all of you observe carefully. One simple example I'm telling you. Try to answer for it. All of you answer for it. For example, you're all students. You're attending the classes here. In offline, I'm talking now. First time we are coming to the institute. Very first time we are attending these classes. First time we want to attend this class. First of all, to which location we are going to, we will go there. At which location we will come there? Yes, sir. Directly want to come to 5th floor, no? But you are not aware about it. So directly we must go to what there? Front office. Front office. Then you may ask that front office counselors, I want to attend for this spring class. Now tell me the direction where the classroom is available. Then they will give the information to go to the 5th floor. And 5th floor 505 is the classroom there. There we can attend the classes. Then it'll come to this classroom there. Here we are attending the classes. Clear. This is the information. Am I right or not? For example, after a few days of time, classroom has been changed. There is some other classroom there at 2nd floor. When you come to the 5th floor, somebody else has given information there. Go to the like what there 4th floor. Go to some other classroom, not here. Even not given information 4th floor or something else. No, classroom has been changed. Please go to the front office to get the classroom details. Then again here what we have to go there from 5th floor to front office. There we have to inquire about it where the spring class is going to be happen. Then they will give information there. At the 4th floor, the class is going on. Then we have to go for what there 401 classroom. Sir, are you getting it or not? So clearly, what is the point I'm telling there? One page to another page. This is the 5th floor classroom is one page. 4th floor classroom is another page. We are not moving directly from 5th floor classroom to another. That means 4th floor classroom. Every movement or every flow of execution must be gone through the front office or not. Every direction we are getting from the front office or not. Similarly, in a web application, in MVC based web application, we must not provide page to page communication directly. For example, in a JSP page or in an HTML file, if we provide hyperlink with the target of some other page, no, if we click on it, automatically flow of execution will go to the other page or not. That should not be happen in the case of MVC based application. That must not be provided in MVC based web applications. Everybody put more concentration here, what I'm telling you now. All right, the point is like what there, in MVC based web applications, we must not provide page to page communication. Yes, sir. We must not provide what communication there. Now tell me, page to page communication. Okay, we must not provide page to page communication, but what we want to provide? Page to page communication here we are not providing, but what is required? Fifth floor to front office to fourth floor. That means we must provide page controller page communication. Come on, guys. Now tell me what exactly the communications here we have to provide. In MVC based web applications, we must not provide page to page communication. We must provide page controller page communication. Yes, sir, got it or not? Okay, fine. I think one more point we missed out actually. Now here itself I have to give that point here. Point number 2 is like what there. All of you understand it clearly. In MVC based web applications, controller must take all the requests from clients. Controller must take all the requests from clients, and viewport must generate the responses to the clients, not controller. Please remember this. Yes, sir. What's the point I'm telling there? In MVC based web applications, who is taking the responsibility of getting requests? No. Taking the request? No. Controller. Who is taking the responsibility of sending responses? No. Viewport must generate the responses here. No. Yes, sir. All of you are following or not? So overall, 7 number of rules and regulations here I provided. Now let us understand what are the 7 number of rules and regulations. No. First one is what there? In MVC based web applications, we must use a servlet as controller and a set of JSP pages as viewport. We must not interchange the controller and view components. Why? Because both are having some separate set of responsibilities. Next one is in MVC based web applications, controller must take all the requests from clients and a viewport must generate the response to the respective clients. In MVC based web applications, controller component must interact with the model component to set a data to the model in order to execute the business logic. In MVC based web applications, viewports will interact with the model components to get the data from the model components. Next one is in MVC based web applications, the controller must not interact with the database directly. The controller may interact with the database through model components only. In MVC based web applications, we will use a set of JSP pages as viewport, but where all the JSP pages must be provided with the Java code less. As much as possible, we have to reduce the Java code inside the JSP pages. In MVC based web applications, we must not provide page to page communication directly, where we must provide page controller page communication. Right, so now these are like what they're pure MVC based rules and regulations and MVC architecture. Yes, sir. All of you are following or not? But remember one point. This is exactly the MVC rules and regulations. But frameworks are available outside. Struts is one of the framework. JSF is another framework. Spring Web MVC is another framework. Xwork 2 is another framework. Like this MVC frameworks are available. There is no guarantee whether all the third-party frameworks are following these rules and regulations as it is. I get my point or not? If Sun Microsystems has provided any framework, then definitely they might be followed these rules and regulations as it is. But these frameworks are provided by third-party organizations. Struts is provided by one company. JSF has provided by some other company previously. Of course, now it's a part of the Java only, but previously it's from some other company. Spring Web MVC provided by some other company. I'll forget my point or not. So these third-party vendors may follow, may not follow as it is these MVC rules and regulations. Yes, sir, got it or not? See, one simple examples here I'm telling you. Try to follow this point here. What is the second rule here we are saying, sir? Now tell me. In MVC based web applications, every request must come to what? Controller. But if you take this structs framework now, directly request will come to the welcome pages. First request will come to what their welcome page. That is a viewport. It's a violation. It's a direct violation. Now get my point or not? Okay, leave this one. If we take Spring Web MVC applications, what we are saying that the last tool here, no, everywhere we have to provide what communication? Page controller page communication here we are providing. But in a Spring Web MVC application, directly we are providing page-to-page communication. That means as per their requirement, as per the third-party frameworks requirement, 70% of the rules and regulations they will follow. The core rules and regulations they will follow. But as per their requirement, they may violate one or two rules and regulations also. So all the third-party products may follow, may not follow these many rules and regulations. Sir, if you understand my point or not? Okay, but how many of them are following perfectly these rules and regulations? No, that we have to check when we are going to talk about the respective frameworks. Getting clarity or not? Okay, fine. Then after this, after understanding this content here, after understanding all the points, no, then we have to go with like what are their frameworks. The topic like what are their frameworks here we are going to understand. Okay, right? So that's okay. Almost all the time is up. Now tomorrow I will cover the remaining part. Tomorrow I will give few minutes of time this total introduction part here. After that I will talk more about like what are their frameworks related content. What are the various types of frameworks? What are the advantages of the frameworks? No, why we need to come for Spring framework over structs on JSF? What are the drawbacks with structs on JSF? After that, in the struts framework, some details about the struts framework, where what exactly the modules are available, what is the purpose of each and every module. After completion of these modules information, then how to prepare first application in struts Spring framework. How to prepare the first application in Spring framework, then how to start the core module. Then from that point onwards, we are going to talk about what there Spring framework completely, totally. Right, sir? That's all for today. And there is a question now. All right, sir. Then on weekend classes, what about the weekend classes on this particular course, the Spring framework? Then people are asking to me. Sure, maximum cases I'm going to take the classes for you on every week, like up to a few weeks of time, Monday to Saturday. But on Sunday classes, I need to assign for Advanced Java at 7:30. Advanced Java class is going on. Next Sunday, I'm sure we are going to have nearly 4-hour session on this Advanced Java. Almost all we are going to wind up. Max, I'm trying to wind up that servlets topic there on next Sunday maximum. So until the completion of the Advanced Java, we are going to have sessions on Sundays for Advanced Java. Once if I complete Advanced Java on Sundays, no, after that, in place of this Advanced Java 7:30 to 9, I'll start Hibernate classes. Then after starting Hibernate classes, I'll give priority for what they the Spring classes to complete on Sundays. On Sundays, more classes we are going to have on a Spring framework. Understand it clearly. So priority wise, I will take the classes now. But as of now, immediately I have to complete what there that Advanced Java classes there. On Sundays, we are going to put more focus on what there Advanced Java classes. Try to recognize this clearly now. Right? Right. That's all for it. Then tomorrow we'll continue the remaining part of the content here. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Right, take few minutes break and come back for servlets class now. Thank you. Yeah, then yeah, Maven is also be covered. With Maven only we are going to prepare the applications in this case. Okay. All right, and Dashish, this Sunday what you teach in Advanced Java servlets I'm going to take. Yeah, servlets I'm going to take. Then Divika, thank you. Ashish, then what you're asking there? On this Sunday I'm going to take servlets class only, not any other class. Okay. For only Spring you are asking, no? Yeah, damn sure. Minimum 2 to 2.5 months of time it will take for spring, only spring. Okay. Minimum 2.5 months of time it will take. Maybe some extra time if I required, I need to take that extra time also. But completeness is important. Max content I will complete. Okay. Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot. But it's not like any separate real-time project, guys. Okay. It is not like in a separate real-time project, but part of the course we are going to see some mini projects. Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. For spring, it will take 2.5 months of time minimum. Gradle and are not required. Just Maven I'm going to cover. So I should say Maven. Through Maven, I'm able to show all the points. Okay, right. The total complete frameworks in the sense parallel I need to take minimum 4 to 5 months of time it will take. 4 to 5 months of time it will take to complete this entire frameworks content max. Okay, Rishikesh. Right. Thank you. Yeah, Vishu, we'll plan for it. Let me try. Let me try. Okay. Vishu, anyway, I'm going to give that videos to you. Don't worry. No need to attend these classes already as per the discussion. Yeah, then no problem. Then you'll get like what there a video support. I will provide some video support to you so that you can complete it as per video as we have some discussion with us. Right. Sir. Yeah, definitely. I'll give some as of immediately. I will give that spring about and Hibernate. These videos I will provide there. Later on, you can go with what there microservice and web services. Okay. Right. Thank you. Why should you? Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks a lot. Within few minutes, I'll start advanced Java. Those who are attending advanced Java, just you can attend for it. Thank you.